name is Jeff Millard. I am the chair of the National Board of Directors of Iraq Veterans Against the War.
So, how long ago you came back from Iraq?
I was in Iraq from October 2004 till October of 2005. I was discharged after 9 months of UA, unauthorized absence, and in 2007.
What is an unauthorized absence?
It's the National Guard's version of AWOL, of leaving without permission.
You can say why?
I stopped thinking like a soldier. I didn't want to be in the military anymore, and I made the decision to leave, realizing that there was really nothing they could do to me.
What made you realize that you didn't want to be a soldier?
A lot of my experiences in Iraq really showed me that the military that I thought I was a part of wasn't real. I always thought I was the good guy, and that, it would always be the Americans riding in on the white horses to save the day, and we weren't. And I more and more realized that we were more often than not the bad guys, and that was really dismaying, and I didn't want to be part of that anymore.
So what did you see or witness that made you realize that you were not the good guys?
Well, in Iraq, I worked for a general, so I didn't do any of the stuff you ever see on TV. Like, I didn't kick down any doors, I wasn't out on patrol, I never even loaded my weapon there, never even left my base. But what really kind of solidified my ideas about the war being wrong, and I went in believing that the war was wrong and that we shouldn't be there, but I also didn't realize what my options were. I didn't know about GI resistance. I thought, you're a soldier, you get ordered, you just go, right? I never had the feeling that I controlled my own destiny, that I had control over my own body. It was like, you go in the army and you just sign away your life, even though that's not really true. That's the way that you're programmed to think, almost. It's drilled into you that you're not an individual, that you don't have ownership over your own body. And so when I deployed with the general and under his staff, a lot of the things that I saw were contradictions, right? We were talking a lot in 04-05 about winning the hearts and minds, and yet every general and high-ranking officer that I talked to seemed to just not really care about that. It was about their OERs, their officer evaluation reports. It was them getting a promotion. That's what they were there for. They weren't there to protect Iraqis, and they really didn't care. They consistently referred to Iraqis as Hajis, and instead of the term that the military is supposed to use, which is local nationals or third country nationals, depending on if you're talking about someone from Iraq or from a different country. They didn't use these terms. Haji was just thrown around pretty flagrantly, and seeing the racism that went into that, and that the way that it showed to me to be systemic. It wasn't just soldiers. See, what ends up happening is we, as a society, blame individual soldiers for these actions, whether it's a shooting in someone's home where they kill a kid or something like that, and you end up blaming the individual soldier who pulled the trigger. And what we fail to recognize is that we are putting soldiers in a situation that all their training tells them to shoot first and ask questions later. All of their rules of engagement tell them to shoot first and ask questions later. All of their situational awareness tells them to do this, and we put them in a very dangerous situation. We hype their sensitivity to danger, and then we punish them when they react the exact same way they were trained their entire military careers. And I think that's really wrong. We're looking at the end result rather than the cause of these situations. So when we have these leaked memos and all of this secret information, that was the kind of stuff that I dealt with on a daily basis, was classified materials up to and including top secret materials, working for the general. And the thing is that those documents didn't tell us anything new, right? It wasn't like when the Pentagon Papers were released, it was like, oh my God, this proves that we faked the Gulf of Tonkin. There is nothing like that, right? This isn't a smoking gun that the government lied about anything. What it shows us is a system of consistent acts that should be classified as war crimes that happen and are condoned and perpetrated through our occupations of Iraq and Afghanistan, specifically with this leak talking about Afghanistan. You know, when we talk about these things happening, Iraq Veterans Against the War was talking about this 2 years ago when we held Winter Soldier, Iraq and Afghanistan, eyewitness accounts of the occupation. We brought together more than 250 members of Iraq Veterans Against the War to talk about our experiences in Iraq and Afghanistan. And what you're seeing in the leaked classified documents now is that the exact same thing we were telling the world was happening 2 years ago.
Why nothing was done when you guys were doing the Winter Soldier?
Well, the Pentagon said that they would investigate any accusation that we made. However, very few of us actually got calls for investigations, and the people who were called, most didn't participate in the military's investigations because, again, the military wanted to scapegoat soldiers at the lowest level possible, rather than investigating what we said were systemic crimes that are happening. And we actually specifically didn't use the word crimes. We just told the world what happened, and it should have been obvious from what we were saying that these are systemic war crimes. And that's what we're seeing out of these WikiLeaks articles and memos, is that we have leaked documents that clearly show that the military knew war crimes were happening, and they built the system around those happening, and they didn't take action to stop them, and they certainly didn't take action to make sure that they were weeded out at a systemic level, to make sure, like at basic training, soldiers get briefed on not just an hour-long briefing when they're dead tired, and if they get sleepy they get taken to the back of the room and exercised until they can't move briefing, but a real briefing so that they actually understand what constitutes a war crime. Actually allowing soldiers to say no to orders. Soldiers right now can be punished up to and including the death penalty for refusing orders. So when you have that possibility, and now the military hasn't put someone to death for this in a very long time. I mean, you'd have to go back to World War II to find someone getting the death penalty for refusing orders. But it's still on the books, and it can happen. And so when you're facing the possibility of getting the death penalty for refusing an order that you may or may not know to be illegal, where you question it to be legal, according to international law, as soon as you think an order might be illegal, it's your duty to say no. But that's not how soldiers are trained. You follow orders, and then afterwards, if you maybe have questions, then you can file a report with the chain of command, who ordered you to do that. So we don't have a system that allows soldiers to refuse orders. So it's not surprising then when we put soldiers in a situation that is immensely intense, that you come back with acts that would constitute war crimes.
As a citizen, an American that participated in the war, but now you are here. What do you think about these WikiLeaks? Do you think that this type of information should be released to the public? What's the impact in the public? What do you think about what should we do as civilians with this information?
Well, the military will constantly tell you that the release of this information endangers our soldiers and our friends on the battlefield. But the fact is that it's not the leaked information. It's the incidents that the information refers to that endanger our soldiers. It's being part of an occupation that is clearly not wanted by the vast majority of Afghan people. Just like the Iraq occupation is still incredibly unpopular as it winds down. So these are the things that put our troops in danger. Leaking a piece of paper is not putting our troops in danger. Okay? What we have to understand is, instead of trying to hoard this information, what we know to be the best way to handle this is to put the information out there, let everyone see it, and if we do have a truly just system, then that system will correct itself. And so you can see that the systemic nature of these occupations is criminal because of the cover-up. Remember, it's always the cover-up that's worse than the crime. And so when you have a criminal system like the occupations in Iraq and Afghanistan, you see that in the cover-up, in the fact that they want to keep these documents secret for a very long time. They don't want them out there. Because if these were just isolated incidents, then they could prosecute them, the people who conduct them would be in jail, and we move on. But what these documents show is these aren't, incidences that are one here, one there, but really isn't part of the system. No, we're showing through these thousands of leaked documents that it's part of the system. Well, I think that what Americans have to do with this knowledge and what kind of the next steps are, because the person who leaked it really should be seen as not as a criminal, but instead as a whistleblower, and should be given whistleblower protections. The problem is the military is not given whistleblower protections. Any other government employee has whistleblower protections. The militaries are they have whistleblower protections in the UCMJ, but it's very strict on who qualifies for it and when, and it's not very broad, and when it comes to classified materials, all that goes out the window. Even though leaking this information can help prevent war crimes, can help prevent the U.S.'s stature in the world further deteriorating, can actually prevent terrorist attacks, because it shows that there are people in America who don't want these things to happen. It humanizes us to the rest of the world, which to a lot of the world, we're inhuman. We're this big machine, right? We're the great Satan. We're this but really, in the States, we're generally good people who generally want to do the right thing, and with the right information, almost always will do the right thing. But the American people are scared into making very rash decisions that end up affecting the entire planet. And what we can do with better information is make better decisions. And we can pressure our politicians, but we can also interact on a daily basis and actually have a more informed discussion. Instead of showing up to that Thanksgiving dinner or whatever family holiday, the barbecue that folks are going to have, and ignoring that conservative uncle, or trying to just attack that crazy liberal, aunt that you have, or something of that nature, we can actually have an informed discussion about issues. Instead of just being like, oh, liberal, conservative, we're going to fight for a while. Actually have informed discussions about things because we have this type of information. But the problem is when we create a situation where whistleblowers are seen as criminals, then the discussion becomes, let's put this person in jail, rather than, what does this information tell us about our foreign policy? Let's have a really good, informed discussion about what our foreign policy is, what it's achieving, and what it's not achieving, and whether or not we want to continue this foreign policy. I think that if Americans could really take an accurate look at the foreign policy from an informed position and not a neutral position. There's people out there that'll tell you that their news broadcasters or whatever are neutral. It's a total lie. The fact is that everyone has a position, and even in who you choose to interview shows your bias. The way that you conduct an interview shows your bias. The way you edit an interview, all this stuff shows bias. But if we can have informed conversations, wherever we come from politically, we can reach consensus around certain issues, and then on what we don't, we can actually work to have a better solution that actually has a goal in mind. Because right now, U.S. foreign policy doesn't really have a goal. It's supposed to be that U.S. foreign policy should be to make Americans safer, but we see consistently foreign policy that makes us less safe. Whether it's our support of Israel without question, or our occupations of Iraq and Afghanistan, or economic support through the WTO and the World Bank, which destroys economies from Haiti to Jamaica to Southeast Asia. These are the types of things that make us less safe. And if we can have an informed discussion about these issues, then maybe we can have a foreign policy that is aimed at actually keeping people who live in the States safe.